Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Nerd Nest podcast. I'm Bill, and today I am joined by Russ from Retro Game Core and Cary, who is over at The Fox. Hey, guys, how's it going today?
Super good. It's a beautiful day out here. It's nice and rainy in Hawaii, and I love the rain, so it's great.
I mean, it's the Rainbow State because it rains there every day, though, right? I mean,
It
when I
does,
lived
yeah.
there, it rained every single day for about an hour, and then it was over.
Yeah, exactly. No matter what, somewhere on the island, it's going to be raining. So.
Nice. How's your day going, Cary?
Not too bad. It's a little bit of pretty all right.
A little bit of pretty all right. All right. Well, if this is your first time here, this is the Nerd Nest podcast where myself and some buddies of mine, we sit down and we chat about the latest gaming news. And we've got a lot to cover today. We're going to talk about the games that we've been playing. And we're also going to talk about the ROG Ally, probably whether or not E3 is ever going to return, and maybe something about remakes. So if that sounds good, let's go ahead and get started. So first off, I want to talk. Well, first off, Russ, you said that you've been playing Legend of Zelda for the NES. Now, if you guys don't know, he has a retro channel, so I'm sure that a lot of time he's going to be playing old games. But last week we were talking about Breath of the Wild and how it compared to Legend of Zelda for the NES. Is that why you were playing Zelda this week?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was just like, you know what? Maybe I'm losing the magic of Legend of Zelda by playing Breath of the Wild like any other open world game. And so, so I ended up, like I had my old, one of my older handhelds, and I was like, let's just try it out. Initially, I actually gave it to one of my sons because we were going on a little trip, and he was like, I said, here, just play this, whatever. And that's what he ended up picking. And that got me thinking, I'm like, maybe I should play it too. So I played a little bit, and I did it without looking on the internet or looking at any maps. And I just like jumped in and just like went into the first dungeon, and it's just getting whooped, like I'm not a skilled gamer. Like I've never been, and so it was just rough. But save states help a lot when it comes to emulation too, so I can just kind of save it and be like, all right, so I don't have to have that anxiety of like, oh crap, I'm gonna have a game over screen here soon. And so yeah, it was a good experience. Like I just kind of played through not a lot, might maybe the first 10% of the game, but that's a lot for me. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was just a little bit, it was unique because it's obviously you're walking into something that is old and well tread, but for me it hasn't been. Like last time I played it was when Nintendo dropped it on the Wii Virtual Console on Christmas Day. Oof. And I think that was like 2007, I think. That was the last time I really gave some time with this game. And so yeah, I enjoyed it. That was really about it. I just kind of wanted to follow up from last week.
I replayed it, I don't know when, I'm gonna say, I don't know, like 3 years ago. I played through it again, and man, I absolutely loved it, especially like the final dungeon. It's just such a fantastic game, and there's a reason why it for me it stands the test of time. But you brought up something that I think is an interesting discussion topic, and you mentioned save states. I use save states. I have zero problem with save states. How do you feel about save states, Cary?
Oh, love them. Absolutely love them. They're the best thing ever. Like they're save states, fast forwarding. Fast forwarding is like the only way that I'll play JRPGs from like a long time ago. It's like you look at the box art, it's like 140 hours of gameplay. And like, let's make it 20.
Yeah,
right.
Oh my god, those older games, they did not respect your time even a little. They were like always felt like they were going for, let's make sure that the back of the box says that we can reach 50 hours of content or something like that. And I was like, I don't have time for that, especially as an old man. I found time for it when I was a kid, though.
You know what my favorite game to play with save states is Tecmo Super Bowl. I play that game dirty. I basically, every play, I will just save it and be like, okay, I try to predict what they're going to do on their end, and then I'll try to win like 99-0. It doesn't go over 99. And that's like my goal. It's like, I just want to spend a half hour just creaming some team, and so I always do that. I love it.
I remember when I was a kid playing Tecmo Super Bowl, and there was one play, I don't remember, or maybe it was John Elway's quarterback. I think it was John Elway's quarterback, where there was always one play that you could play. I don't remember what it was, but it would make your character, like the whoever was running it, faster than everybody else, and nobody could catch them. And it was like my friends and I would just always use that play because it was hilarious watching other people try and catch up. Cary, what have you been playing this week, man? Anything?
No, the only thing that I played, I was trying to catch up on some Game Pass games that were going to be leaving the service. So there's Annapurna Interactive. They make some really interesting games that are kind of artsy, but they're short. They're like super short. So whenever I see that they're leaving from Game Pass, I'm like, okay, it's an hour or two, and I can just like play this and enjoy it. So I always try to like do that. So the thing was like a Memoir Blue that was leaving, but I didn't get a chance to finish that. But before we go too far into that, I just wanted to mention two things. Number one, Tecmo Bowl. As a kid, I determined my favorite football team just by the colors of the Raiders. And I was like, man, these guys have the best colors. I'm a Raiders fan. They're like, they're like on the other side, guy. And also for speaking of Legend of Zelda, a thing that you guys should take a look at is a prototype that someone came out with called Breath of the Ness, which is using the same type of prototyping they did for Breath of the Wild, where they remade Legend of Zelda, but you can play through basically what's looking like Legend of Zelda, but with a Breath of the Wild type of systemic type of properties.
Oh,
wow.
okay.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what were the Game Pass games that are leaving that you checked out?
It was called a Memoir Blue, I think it is. It's from Annapurna Interactive. This is this week. This is the new set that are leaving this month.
Oh, so you mean last month?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the only thing from there is probably Rift Breaker that I want to play. That's the one thing about like Game Pass is like whenever I take a look at the games that are leaving, if you go to like gamepassport.net, it's a fantastic Game Pass site that you can quickly and easily just kind of navigate through what you want. You can like sort by like time to completion, games that are couch co-op, multiplayer.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a really cool site. Gamepassport.net.
Cool.
Super great site for Game Pass people. So if you have Game Pass, this is like a really easy way to like, especially if you have buddies and friends, you're like, what should we play? Well, let's just click on these little buttons and like, this is it. We have 10 games that we can choose from all together because we have the same games. So it's a site that I really recommend, but you can also choose games that say on the top where it says availability, it says leaving soon. So you can always just kind of go there and you say leaving soon and games that are easy to finish within like 1 to 2 hours. And I'm like, okay, well, out of this list, there's not much. Like, I guess Life is Strange is probably going to be the shortest one there, or Quantum Break.
Mm-hmm.
Quantum Break is coming back though. Quantum Break, they had a licensing thing snafu, so it's leaving, but it's also coming back to Game Pass. So, but yeah, that's just a little tip if you wanted to get through a game and it's like, oh no, it's leaving, I didn't get a chance to play it, and just use GamePassport.net.
That's an awesome. I never heard of that website, so right there, I'll make sure to try and add that to the show notes, everybody, because that's super useful. Richard, who's probably going to join us later, wanted to talk about Resident Evil 4 remake. He wanted to talk about the difficulty. I will say that game is really hard, like really hard, but I also feel like it's fair because every time that I'm playing it, like I might get killed a bunch of times. Like especially I had to fight these two guys that can only hear you and can't see you, and they killed me a whole bunch of times. But eventually I overcame, and I haven't like lowered the difficulty. Although I feel like they make the shooting mechanics in that game punishing, like sloppy on purpose in order to increase the horror factor.
Right.
I could be wrong about that. But have either of you guys been playing Resident Evil 4 remake?
I meant to after we talked about it, before. I need to get through the demo. But then also, you talked, Bill, about playing it on the PS5, and I thought, you know what? Because I'm too scared of that dang game, right? And I don't like playing it on the PC. But I think PS5 on the couch, like that just seems a little bit easier for me. And so I've been meaning to pick it up, but it's just it's a hard pill to swallow at that price. So
yeah, absolutely. All right, so that I have been playing a game on my PSVR 2, which is absolutely fantastic. It's also available on PC VR. I've been told, and that is the Light Brigade. This game is a roguelike shooter, and it is so good. It's procedurally generated, so every time you get your rifle and a pistol and a magic wand, and then you go into a procedurally generated area where these dudes who are like they're procedurally generated too, based on like what weapons they're going to have and like what kind of stuff that, like how many of them are going to be there, and you go into like room to room fighting them and collecting souls essentially. Every time you kill one, you get some soul stuff, which you can then exchange for, like it's a currency. You can exchange for stuff, and you can find where other players have gotten killed, and like you just kind of hold your hands up together in front of your face to pray for them, and then you get their souls back, and then you can use those souls to buy like grenades and all kinds of crazy stuff. And of all the games that I've had on my PSVR 2 since I've gotten it, this is the one I think that I've played the most, and the one where I have played for the longest amount of time in one sitting, because it is just so addictive as you're playing it. And then the last thing that I'll say is the one thing about it that I don't like is the fact that when you're playing this, I'm always afraid to, like, I have yet to try this, but I have not shut the game off mid-run. Like, I don't see an obvious way for me to save mid-run so that I can go do something else with my life. So every single time that I've played, I have played through a full run, not necessarily a full run, but I've played through until I've gotten killed. And then that's when I stop. But it's the Light Brigade. It's awesome. If you've got a VR headset, it's on PSVR 2. I believe it's also on PC, and it is incredibly addictive. Do either of you guys play VR at all?
I've been thinking about getting the PSVR, and that game looks interesting too. But I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you get penalized when you die? Like that's my least favorite thing in a game. Like when I lose something and I can't get it back, like, oh, it stresses me out.
Okay, so when you die in the game, you have like 3 lives essentially. And so when you die in the game, your stuff, not your weapons and stuff, but just the souls that you've collected, is on like your corpse. And you go back into the level and you pray at your corpse to get that stuff back. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay,
so
but if
like
you die,
Demon Souls games,
yeah, exactly. But if you die 3 times, then your game is over and you're starting over again, because it's a roguelike. It's always a fresh run. But depending on how well you perform, you will get like skill points, which then you can pay, like you can use those skill points to upgrade your gear and stuff like that. So even though, yes, you do lose some souls when you die, there is a punishment for dying. You're always kind of progressing your character further. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fair. Yeah, that's exactly what I was hoping, something that stacks. I think it was the game Control. Like I started dying in that one, and it I was losing like 10% of your inventory every time you die, and I was like, this is not working for me mathematically. Like I'm going to be going to 0 here soon, and so that like I didn't finish the game, like mostly because of that. And so yeah, I'm always on the hunt for a good game that's stackable, like Hades or something, right? But I don't like to be punished like for dying, and so.
Yeah, this is very much like Hades. All right, so let's go ahead. I got kids at the door. We'll talk later. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the news. And I think that a lot of us are going to be interested in talking about the ROG Ally, or the ROG Ally, the Asus ROG Ally, which I'm going to say that we'll talk about that in a little bit. But last week it was funny, like Russ mentioned this in our little private Discord channel, that we killed E3. Like yesterday, we mentioned that E3 was having Ubisoft is backing out and somebody else is backing out. I can't remember who. Like all these companies were backing out, and we're like, boy, is E3 on its last legs? I think so. And then it got canceled like the next day. So here's my question to all of you. Do you guys think that E3 is ever coming back? Cary, I'm going to have you go first.
Oh, that's a tough question, man. You pin it on me first as well.
I do. I'm a jerk. Tell your friends.
I think that it's a tough question. I would personally assume that they would take this opportunity. I'm saying the bigger companies will take this opportunity to have their own show. Summer Game Fest, which we determined was called the Summer Game Fest, is also a nice slot for it. But even just like the second week of June being like the ideal time for this, I personally think that as a convention, it's hard to say. I do feel like there's still a chance for it. ReedPop is a really good organization, and I have been to PAX East multiple times, and they run it like a well-oiled machine. So I think that the problems is really just the the ESA's association with it more than ReedPop's association with it. But like, I do think there's a lot of people that love E3. They want to see it come back, and I think that we're going to have some type of E3 regardless of E3 existing. So I don't know. It's a tough one. I'm going to say no.
Okay, so Fox says no. Russ, what do you think?
I also think that, yeah, it's probably doomed. But the thing is, I really think there needs to be an alternative. Like the biggest thing, and I've seen it on Twitter a few times, is people talking about kind of the collaboration and competition that happens among the different booths while they're there. You know, all the different publishers and developers and stuff getting together and kind of innovating there in the space. Number one, you know, they're meeting each other and kind of making those connections too. But then the other part is like seeing what the other people are doing in person and how that kind of affects their own development framework. And so there needs to be something like that. You know, I haven't never been to a game convention, but I went to CES earlier this year. And I saw the same thing happening in the tech space. You know, a lot of it was like VR related tech stuff, but all the same, I was watching how people like would go around the other booths, see what other people were doing, and kind of come up with these fresh ideas. Even for me as like a YouTuber with, you know, retro game content, like I had a lot of great ideas coming out of CES as well. And so we need something with that collaboration and whatnot. And if E3 isn't going to be it, then yeah, like Cary was mentioning, we need an alternative.
Yeah, and you know what? I think all the gaming companies realize that it's easy for them to put out a video at a certain time, and they don't have to spend the money. Like you got to spend a lot of money to get to E3, to get yourself a hotel, and then you got to pay for the booth. And, you know, you also got to transport equipment and stuff in order to set up your booth, and you got to pay people while you're there. Like that's a really expensive thing, especially when you contrast that against, hey, we'll just release a video on YouTube around the beginning of mid-June, and that counts as E3. And so, like you said, Cary, like I feel like E3 is still a thing, but going to E3 for these, like, for them to organize a big thing where like all of the journalists and stuff get together and go to E3 in order to see this stuff ahead of time. It's just so much easier now to just do that stuff online. It's different when they're showing off hardware, because then you got to be able to show that hardware off. It's not like you can download it. But when you can say, like Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest, where they're like, by the way, these games are going to be these demos are going to be downloadable on Steam during the Summer Games Fest, or during what's the winter one? The Game Awards. Like all that stuff is much easier and just an easier way for these companies to get to customers and get their message across. The one thing that I thought was really weird is their response to this is they said companies were talking about taking up huge spaces. The E3 team was looking at how we could expand into the car park and use extra areas that hadn't been used for years. It was full steam ahead, but then the mood changed and people were like, our games aren't ready. We don't have code, which is a really weird phrase to say. We don't have code. I don't know what that means. And we can't be seen as extravagant in this economy. I think that's fine. Or the timing isn't quite right. Do you think that a lot of companies are like, all right, we have to delay, so going to E3 is a bad idea because we have to delay our games again? Are we still seeing that continuation of delays of games from the pandemic?
You can go ahead first, Ross.
I was gonna say, you know, it is possible, but I think it's just culture has shifted since the pandemic. I hear these kind of things at work as well, you know, or when I used to work. I'm retired now, but you know, like that's the typical thing, is that people kind of make the pandemic becomes an excuse for everything. And so whether or not it is its own thing. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised by any of those responses. You know, I think that's just kind of a norm that we say nowadays. But whether or not it's true, I don't know.
Well, next time I want to, delay a video, I'm just going to say I don't have the code. Hey, Richard. Richard just joined us. He had an appointment that went a little bit late. We already got past the games that we've been playing, but I know that you wanted to mention Resident Evil 4 Remake for the difficulty level of it. Just real quick, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I will make it quick. So Resident Evil 4, the original, had dynamic difficulty, and the remake scraps the dynamic difficulty altogether. And so that's been interesting to me as someone who is a real big fan of the dynamic difficulty. Where, yeah, if you were having trouble, it did it. If you were
Oh,
having
Richard, I'm losing your audio again. You faded away. You may want to like reboot something. Could you say that last part again?
Yeah, so if you were having trouble in Resident Evil 4 in the original, it would adjust the difficulty level down. But more importantly for me was if you were doing really well, it would give you more enemies. It would give you a
Oh.
harder time. And so right now I'm blasting through a few bosses, and I kind of miss the fact that, like, yeah, if you were having a really good time, if you were doing really well, it would throw some more enemies at you. So that's what I wanted to say in regard to Resident Evil 4.
I never played the original. That sounds really cool. I wish more games would do that kind of thing where it like says, all right, Bill's pretty good. Okay, let's be honest. Bill is terrible at this. So let's take it easy on him.
Take it easy.
Yep.
We don't want him to quit because he's too scared.
Yep.
Anyway, that's awesome. Okay. Now that everybody's here, I wanted to talk. Everybody wanted to talk about the ROG Ally. So I want to take this in sections. Okay. Number one, first, let's talk about the announcement on April Fool's Day. A lot of people are saying that's a bad move. I think on PR wise, I think it was a great move because it got a bunch of people talking about it, asking, is it real? So there's article number 1 written about this thing. And then 2, then they put the next article, it is real. And so they get twice the amount of coverage. Now, I'm not saying that I like that they did that, but I think that it worked for them. What do you guys think about them announcing real things on April Fool's Day, which is a huge tech holiday?
Yeah, I kind of saw through it personally. I was like, there's no way this can be an April Fool's joke. Like the Best Buy integration, it just and the amount of money they spent making that trailer and stuff. Yes, it was kind of, cheeky or whatever, but all the same, I was like, this thing's real. And so when I posted a tweet about it, I was just like, yeah, here it is. This is the specs. This is what I'm interested in, and then I got a lot of comments of like, oh, this isn't real. And I'm like, okay, we'll talk tomorrow then. I liked it. I didn't mind it.
Yeah.
Cary?
Yeah, so I mean, this is like kind of like like as you said, like a tech holiday. Like Gmail was announced on April Fool's Day, and everyone's like, "Oh, ha ha ha, 5 gigabytes." But yeah, so I kind of like when companies do real April Fool's things because I don't know, it's better than a lot of the other type of like when I did an April Fool's thing, I like it to be like definitely understood that it's a fool. Like you're like, oh, that's just a joke. But it's the ones that are cruel are the ones that you like kind of like believing in it, and you get to the end of it, it's like April Fool's, and you're like, ugh.
Oh yeah, where you're like, oh, I really want this to happen, and then it's not real.
Yeah, those ones are always the ones that I dislike a lot. So you always have to like kind of pepper it a little. I think the thing that got me a bit was when I just did a cursory glance of it. I was like, is that just the Aoki Zoe that they got?
Yeah.
And that yeah, like
It looks
just,
a lot like the Aoki Zoe.
Yeah, I was like, did they just dress that up a little bit? So yeah, that was my initial thought, and literally I'd woken up to it and I looked at him like bleary-eyed. Oh, what is this? Still a big fan of it.
Is there any chance that One Netbook or the sister company to One Netbook could be providing help in design here? Is there any chance of that? It seems like a no, right?
I would say no, but then there was some weird stuff going on with OneNet and Tencent. So Tencent, I think, had a patent that was basically OneNet's design. So it's not out of the ordinary to see this, but with a company like Asus, I would say no. But that's just me personally.
Yeah,
well,
I
I'd
almost feel
also
like,
say, I mean, look at cell phones. They're all rounded rectangles because that's really like the best design for a cell phone right now. So I mean, I think essentially most stuff is going to look the same anyway.
Yeah, if I was to be my most reductive, I would say that the Asus engineers Googled, handheld PCs, saw the AOK Zoe A1, and were like, all right, let's start here, and that's the worst one to start with. But that's
Yeah, look at that D-pad. We got
exactly.
All right, so let's move on from the April Fool's thing and talk about the form factor. Now, of course, none of us have had it in our hands. All right. So here's my question. What I watched the Linus Tech Tips thing where he showed that it doesn't have the curves that the Steam Deck has, which makes it super comfortable. And then who was the other one that got their hands on it? I can't remember his name.
Dave
2D, yeah. So then Dave 2D, he kind of mentioned that it didn't have those contours either. What do you guys think about the comfort of this thing versus, say, the Steam Deck, which I think for everybody is one of the most comfortable devices ever, in my opinion? Richard, start with you.
Yeah, I think the D-pad looks horrendous. No question about that. Otherwise, I mean, I like the wider handles on the Steam Deck, but the buttons look fine. The analogs look fine. I do wish it was Hall sensor as well, of course. It looks like an Aya Neo 2, just that D-pad is terrible. So that's my biggest concern right now.
All right. So Richard, just so you know, your volume is all over the
Up and
place
down.
again. So I'm not sure what's happening there. Yeah.
take a
Thank you, Mother Rat, for letting us know. Fox, what do you think about the overall design of this thing, having not had it in your hands?
I think the design is fine. I mean, when it comes to the design of things, I'm not really a stickler to how the thing looks or how its ergonomics are, because ergonomics it's a whole bag of nuts anyway when you're talking about that, because people's hand sizes are different. So what I like doesn't necessarily translate to other people. That also goes along with like fan loudness. In all of my times looking at fans, people generally, it's just binary. Is the fan, when people say is the fan loud, what they really mean is, can you hear the fan?
Yeah.
And that's just a yes or no question. So when people say, is the fan loud? It's just like, yes, the fan is loud. They're like, oh, I can't believe it's so loud. And I'm like, well, I mean, it's audible. So yeah, you're probably not going to like it. But I don't really care about an audible fan unless it's like really high pitched and whiny. It doesn't typically bother me. So that's like the only thing I would say is, like, when you talk about ergonomics, how it feels, how loud the fan sounds are, that I am traditionally very lenient on that point aside. Like, I'll mention it, but it's not something that I will myself personally drill on outside of, I do like how the offsets are. So the analogs to the D-pad for my thumb, like how thumbs are going to travel, I think that's fine. So for me, I think it's fine. It's a slate based candy bar shaped handheld. I think it's fine.
According to the Cary, as long as if it's not a clamshell, he's not having it.
It's already inferior. So like,
Russ, you are huge into handhelds. What do you think of this thing?
So there are a couple things I think they got right. Number one, like Cary was just mentioning, like they have set the face buttons, D-pad, all that stuff, even the analog sticks, a little bit higher on the device, so they're in the top half. That's going to make it more comfortable. That's how the AOK Zoe did it, and actually that was a pretty comfortable handheld, honestly. I don't like how it's squared off at the corners and the edges, but there's definitely still a way that can be comfortable. But I am worried about Linus's video where he said, essentially what he said is, oh, you're holding it wrong. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like the same thing they said about the iPhone. Remember when the antenna issues and stuff? And I'm like, man, you can't just like tell us how to hold it. Like it should just be naturally like ergonomic. And so I'm a little worried about that, because he was like, yeah, you have to hold it at this angle in order for it to feel good. And I don't know. We'll see about that. If you start already making excuses, then that's a bad sign.
Yeah.
But all the same, I don't know. They've got a lot. It's a relatively biggish handheld, so they've got a little bit of room to work with. And so the biggest thing for me is that they're putting thought into it and they're taking feedback. And so that's important to me.
Yeah. As far as that D-pad goes, I think that D-pad looks like hot garbage on a stick. But I also thought the same thing about the PlayStation D-pad on the DualShock 4, and that doesn't bother me at all. I thought the same thing about the new Xbox One, which has like, it's a circle with like the tilty whatever's thing. And that doesn't bother me at all. And I thought the same exact thing about the Stadia D-pad. I thought that thing looked like garbage. And then when I played it, I was like, oh, this D-pad's actually fine for me. But then again, I don't play fighting games. But if you're playing fighting games, you're probably using a stick anyway. You know what I mean? Like not a stick on the device, but like a
arcade stick.
Those joystick things, a fight stick, right? All right. Apparently this thing has no gyro. Did I hear that right?
There's no mention of it. Like we don't. That was like an open question that I had on my side. Is that they didn't reveal much of anything of how the controller was initialized, how it's interpreted. It from the command center that they have, it looks like it's always on, and you can switch between having it trying to automatically determine if a game is running, I guess through some API in the background, to then kick in the controllers, and then it'll switch over to a mouse emulation mode. But you can actually manually do this yourself through the command center.
Mhm.
So I don't know what mechanism they are doing this through. Is it advertising itself as a 360 controller, as an Xbox One controller? In this case, it wouldn't have gyro, but then you can get that done on INEO and GPD because of the BMI 160 sensor that they have on there. So does it have it? I don't know, but we don't know because they didn't say anything. So it's just like kind of like an open question that there's just like they spent. For me, it's just like, okay, I get it, but you could have just gave us a little bit more information, I guess. I don't know. It's just not enough information.
Yeah, I
Have
think
any
that
of
those are
you-
really important things to know. Like, if it doesn't have gyro, to me, that's a no deal, especially for PC gaming, because a lot of games like they're not going to work. Same thing with the trackpads. I think this thing looks awesome, but it doesn't have trackpads. How are you going to play X game? You know what I mean? Richard, you look
Yeah.
like you had something to say.
Have any of you seen the leaks and rumors for like the features on this? I don't know how legit it is, but it mentions that the gyro controls were not functioning properly in Windows. It says in October release date, it has a pricing on there, 512, 649. Yeah, I can't tell how legit this is, but
Yeah, I have no idea how legit it is. Well, I guess that's a good transition to talk about price. When I saw it, I said to my, I mean, 649, 512 gigs for 649 and a terabyte for 899 seems, well, A, incredibly aggressive, and B, almost impossible. Like they don't have the Steam store to help them make money on sales of this thing. You know what I mean? Is that Richard, what do you think about the price? About what do you think is the right price for this device?
I think if they can get it at 650, that's a knock it out of the park, right? But I kind of have the same concerns, Cary, that you mentioned in your video about just have they even gotten that far in terms of like analysis, right? Are they still trying to figure out how many people will buy this thing and based on that determine what the price is? And that seems a lot more realistic at this point in time than they actually have a set price and they're going to launch in 5 months from now. That it seems a lot more realistic that they're still thinking about that, thinking through that and gathering information on that.
Yeah, Russ.
So I had a couple thoughts about that. Number one, I hope that they have kind of like the Steam Deck one, where they have a very low tier model, which is going to be like what everyone can say, oh, well, this is what it costs. Everyone says the Steam Deck costs $400, but how many people buy the $400 model, right? And then they got to do the SD card and all that kind of stuff. So I hope that they do have a good entry level price, and I'm hoping between $600 and $700. And then for all the people who are chasing the numbers, which I think are going to be, those are the people that will be more attracted to this device just because of all the specs, 120 hertz, all that kind of stuff. Give them a really expensive one, and maybe they can recoup their costs from that. You know what I mean? Like someone who wants to get the ultra spec $1,200 one, great, but give us the $600 one as well. And so I'm hoping that'll happen. The second component, I'm just kind of wishing out loud with this one, is that I hope that at some point there's like a partnership with like Microsoft. For example, make this like there's already an Xbox or a Game Pass logo on their website, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make this a Game Pass like partner device. Let Microsoft get in on the cut of that, bring some capital to it, bring down the price maybe, but then also throw on 3 months of Game Pass or whatever partnership needs to be, right? I'd love to see something like that. If Microsoft is going to make their own handheld, then partner with somebody to bring down the cost for everybody.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I will say that I'm not saying what price do I think that we want. I'm saying what price do I think is realistic. I don't see them hitting anywhere close to the low end of the Steam Deck. I think that's bananas. When I first saw it, I was like, this is going to be $900 for the cheapest version. $650. Cary, do you think that's possible? $650 for that?
So the problem is that I know a lot of things that I don't. It's difficult for me to say out loud because there's multiple people that I have conversations with,
Mm-hmm.
and I know what chip it is, and well, I know I've been told by a number of people what it was, and they all aligned on the same one.
Okay.
And this also goes back before it was even announced. And then I also know based on that what another company knows what they can sell a device like that for, and it's under 650.
Really? Okay.
So the prices make sense, but the problem is that Asus has thousands of employees, and I still feel like it's a whole nother Alienware UFO situation where they have brought this thing out and are looking to see how much interest is in it. And they're saying it's a prototype right now, and they're bringing it out. They didn't have it ready for CES, so this is now the next best thing is that they go to Linus and Dave 2D to try to drum up some type of awareness. So now, for me, I still feel like that sign up thing is a thinly veiled survey for them to get data from, and they're just have a partnership with Best Buy. I think that it's further along than the UFO ever was, and only because the Steam Deck has made a nice landing pad for a lot of different companies, right?
Oh yeah.
So there's an easier way for them to entertain this. However, the reality is that gamers are very opinionated on what a gaming thing should cost. So everyone ever talks about the Steam Deck, even though Gabe said, "Oh, we're surprised that so many people bought the most expensive model, and they're not actually buying the $400 model." When people talk about the Steam Deck, they only reference it at that $400 price. So this is the weird situation that we find ourselves in. The crux of it is that yes, the price is possible. Would Asus do that? I don't know. I think that they're still getting data, and then there's also accessories and stuff that they're going to be selling, which is also add-on, like value-added stuff that is part of the pie outside of just licensing deals or like buddy deals, like Microsoft, like Russ had mentioned, which is already plastered on there. So for sure, there's got to be something there where they're getting some type of money. But Best Buy has to make their money as well. So it's like all these things that have to make money that this is where the price starts keeping on increasing, and this whole thing is a real problem. And you saw the same thing happen with the Alienware UFO, where they were like, yeah, it's coming out, and everyone was like, that looks like a premium Switch, I'd pay $500 for that. And it's like, wow, you're so off on what Alienware wants to charge for that. And as soon as they got, like, you just look at all these tweets on comments, it was just like, this thing is just not going to happen. It's just that the reality is that the Steam Deck has created the tiers of pricing, and my thought is that if they're looking at this and they say, oh, only 10,000 people signed up, and then if only 5,000 of those people are going to get it, and we can't charge more than 800, let's just scrap the entire thing, and then the whole thing won't actually ever materialize at all.
Yeah, I can see that too. But like, I don't know if I'll change the title of the episode later, but the title of the episode right now, as we record, is "Will the ROG Ally compete with the Steam Deck?" If it hits that $600 whatever price point, yeah, it competes with the Steam Deck.
Oh yeah.
But if they don't do that, then that's not their competition. Their competition isn't the Steam Deck. Their competition is like all these other more expensive and more powerful gaming handhelds. And the cool thing about it is they all have the same library. It's the PC library. So I can play the games on the PC or on the Steam Deck, and Cary can play the games on the ROG Ally, and we're playing the same games. His games look a little bit better than mine or run at a little bit better of a frame rate, but I spent a little bit less money, and that's how PC gaming is. It's not about, well, I got a Dell and you got an Alienware and you got a, I don't even know. I don't know. I've always built my own computer, so I can't think of any other companies. But like, that's just which company are you playing your PC games on? So here's the thing, is there's going to be these fanboys, these tribal fanboys that are like, the Asus ROG Ally, or ROG, I don't know how to say it. The ROG Ally is garbage and the Steam Deck is the best. And there's going to be people on the other side of it, like, the Steam Deck is not as powerful. And it's just one more thing for people to get grumpy about.
Yeah.
Yeah, one more thing I had my hopes up that you kind of deflated, Cary, was the fact that Asus was promoting this as they were working closely with AMD on the chip, and you're saying other people may have worked with this chip before or have considered this chip before. I don't know if it's Little Phoenix or it's not Little Phoenix, but either way, when I heard that from Asus, I was thinking about, what Valve was able to do in terms of working on a below 15 watt kind of threshold, especially at the 12 watt, the 8 to 12 watt sweet spot. That's what I was looking for from this. And then I heard I heard the 2X at 35 watts, and I'm like, that's not what I'm looking for. I think that's great for other people, but that's not what I was looking for. So that was one thing that I got kind of deflated by from the last couple days of videos.
It's still going to be a good chip, and they can still thinly veil it as a custom chip.
Yep.
The thing is, for me, I actually am interested in that eGPU setup. Like,
Yeah.
I have a big desktop PC. I have all my handheld PCs. I got a bunch of mini PCs too. If I could just have one, and I know it's going to be way more expensive than having it piecemeal, but the convenience of that and just having this really sleek interface, I was even thinking to myself, okay, I can put the eGPU like under the desk, I have it suspended underneath and just have one cable coming out and plug that up whenever I want to actually use it as a PC, and just kind of go back and forth. Yes, I can do that on the Steam Deck, but honestly, I'm just playing the same low resolution games, but on a bigger screen when I'm doing that with the Steam Deck. I'd like the idea of just kind of having that setup. And I get it. I have a couple of mini PCs that are capable of using eGPUs, and I never want to do it because it's just so big and so many wires and all that kind of stuff. I'm the type of person where I'm actually in that target audience. I would like to see just a one plug kind of solution. And so I'm interested in that component of it personally.
I actually think that that's really compelling. When the Steam Deck first got announced, like that was one of the first immediate questions that I had was, does that USB-C port support, what is it, Thunderbolt that it has to support in order to do Thunderbolt 4, right?
Yeah, they call it something different, but yeah.
Yeah. So does it have Thunderbolt 4 or whatever the heck it's called? It doesn't matter what they named it. So that it will use an eGPU, because I could see getting that and then an eGPU and then being able to play your games at a higher resolution on a TV and playing them at a lower resolution on a low resolution screen when you are, on the go. I thought that would be fantastic, but unfortunately the Steam Deck doesn't do that. Maybe the next Steam Deck. But I mentioned resolution, so let's talk about that screen, because that screen brings with it a whole bunch of problems, I think. For those of you that don't know, it has a 16:9 screen, which I think is great. It's 1080p, which I personally think is overkill for a screen that size. And it has 120 hertz. Now, in my opinion, the reason that you do 120 hertz is to make it easier. Like, maybe there's a couple of reasons. Number one, maybe it's easier for them to source, because like getting lower refresh rate screens, maybe that's getting harder these days. I don't know. I'm not in that world. And B, 120 is divisible by 30 and divisible by 40, and that makes things a lot easier. But what do you guys think of this 120 hertz? Is that just a selling point on the box, or are they actually going to have 120 hertz games running on this thing where you will actually want to? Cary?
All right. So for a few things have to be addressed first, is that the problems that I was trying to address in my video, and a lot of people, I don't think, fully contextualize what I was saying. If we take a look at like modern DX12 games that are running on Windows, there is no such thing as full screen exclusive mode. There is no such thing as full screen mode. You either have borderless window or windowed mode. And typically it will default to borderless window, which will be the base resolution of your Windows desktop. So it will be defaulting to what is running. So if it's set to 1080p 120, a game is going to set itself to that. And if you're trying to do that on that type of chip, you're not gonna have a good time. Most modern games are very, very demanding, and 1080p, yeah, 1080p 60, yeah, 1080p 120, no, it might not be super awesome. So this is their command center that they have bringing out. There is a way that you can quick toggle resolution, and there is a way that you can quick toggle frequency. So I think that as long as they have these, it's fine. But because we don't know what it's going to be at default, if it's going to be that, then there's going to be a lot of games that are going to just like hitting these things. Now, a 40 FPS cap does fit into 120 hertz just fine, and that's great and all good. The other thing that's really nice that not a bunch of people are talking about is BFI, black frame insertion, where you insert a black frame in between every other frame. Essentially, you're hitting 60 FPS, but the end result is that the motion looks far smoother. The only thing is that BFI will make the screen dimmer, but then again, it's 500 nits, so it's super bright. So this will counter out the dimming of BFI, which is also a really cool feature. So now if we're talking 1080p 60 with BFI, that's cool, but I would probably still do like 800p 60 with BFI if that's possible, because the chip is still going to really excel in the 800p area, 720p area, and 1080p is still fine, but the bottleneck here is still the GPU. And even though Zen 4 is superior, if we're talking about N7 Zen 2 versus N4 Zen 4, yeah, it's a gigantic vast difference. Also, if for emulation purposes, we have AVX 512 now, so RPCS3 will be better on this chipset. Lots of things that are awesome about the CPU. I'm not saying the CPU on this newer chip isn't great, it's fantastic. What I am saying is that RDNA 3 going from N7 RDNA 2 to N4 RDNA 3 is not the jump that we're all hoping it's going to be. Insofar as the benchmarks that we've seen, like the things that are being leaked and continually leaked, we're looking at 20 to 30% better. And there's not much I can say more than that based on what's already publicly available. So if you're looking at something that is going to be demanding on the GPU, going up in resolution is something that is going to be demanding on the GPU. Yeah. And this is not something that RDNA 3 versus RDNA 2 is going to massively increase performance on. So what you're looking at is, instead of a game running at 40 FPS, which a lot of games run at 800p 40, even though they're running at sub resolutions of 800p, is you're going to probably find that you're going to be running 800p 60 pretty comfortably inside of 15 watt on this particular device, which is still awesome. But the reality is you're half the resolution and half the frame rate of what it's made for. And I'm glad it exists. I'm happy it exists, because there's some games that'll be able to play it, but it's just big number better type of thing, and that is the opposite of what we want on handhelds. And my concern is, there's a lot of people saying, oh, this is negative and more people coming into it is great. My concern is that we're going to get more people in, and they're going to get this and go, this is garbage, I don't like this at all, everything is bad. And I don't want to minimize options either, but not everyone is like us, right? They're not. Yeah,
we're the nerds.
Yeah, so we are the enthusiasts, and we will take it to the next level. We're going to talk about things and know how to run things like, oh, okay, I just have to run this at a low resolution. Anyone that's just going to pick this up at Best Buy is just going to like gun it and like, why am I getting 40 FPS? It's supposed to be 1080p 120. And
yeah, because it says it'll say it on the box, 1080p 120, and then they'll be like, well, this isn't what this says.
So yeah, that's basically where my thought process is right now. I think for Asus is a bigger company. I wish that they went in a different direction other than big number better is my main complaint at the moment. It's still going to be awesome, and I'm glad they're coming in here. And the golden age of handhelds, it's fantastic. It is great. However,
so moving on from that, Russ, battery life.
Okay,
this screen, 120 hertz, 1080p. Is it worth it to sacrifice the longer battery life that you would get out of something that had a lower resolution, less frequently updated screen?
Yeah, I'm the kind of person, I don't like to gun my device at all, right? Like even the Steam Deck and stuff, like, yeah, I can play God of War. I have it installed on my Steam Deck and I don't play it on it. It's like, it's one of those things where I do play the lightweight games more, mostly because of like battery concerns. Like I want to be able to play it for more than 20 minutes or whatever. And so just looking at the size of it, and I think Linus mentioned it's going to be a similar kind of battery performance as the Steam Deck, right? So if we say 40, 45 watts or whatever it's going to be, with 2 fans now, so it's got twice as much like fans that it has to actually power. I don't know. Like I get it. The 120 hertz would be great, and we were joking about this before the show. It's going to be for 20 minutes, like you're going to be able to just knock out that game for that much time. And I don't know. I know if I'm going to sit down and play a game like that, like a really nice experience, I want it to be longer than 20 minutes myself, and so, I'm conflicted about it, but I don't think that we're going to see some huge like battery performance gain. The Steam Deck is already pretty incredible when it comes to just the tweaks and optimizations and all that kind of stuff. I'd rather have something like that than just try to gun it and see if I can get the best performance or whatever. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and before people are like, you guys just like the Steam Deck because whatever, that's not true. I like I like whatever works really, really well and is easy for me to use. So like that's where I'm coming from. And like Russ said, you hit the gas on the Steam Deck, you can run that into the ground in an hour and a half. How long are these other games? Are these games going to last on a device that, arguably will perform better at 15 watts? But if you want the performance that they're going to put on the side of the box, because that's why they went for the big numbers, you're going to kill it in 30 minutes or something.
Right.
Richard, any last thoughts to wrap up the ROG Ally?
Yeah, I have one last thought.
One last thought.
I think it's a failure if ROG Ally comes into stores, into Best Buy retail stores before the Steam Deck does.
Ooh, shots fired.
Kind of to the same point that Cary was making, right? Like, I think that we want players to have the best like first impression, and whatever you think about the specs of the Steam Deck and how outdated it may be now or a year from now or whatever, I think it provides the most streamlined experience for a player that is new to PC gaming. I know people that never owned a PC before, but they own a Steam Deck, right? A lot of people. And they're not thinking about buying a PC. They're not thinking about now expanding their PC gaming life. Steam Deck is the only one. And I think that if Valve isn't able to get Steam Deck in retail stores, but like the Ally comes to Best Buy retail shelves, it's a huge missed opportunity.
All right. Interesting. All right, let's move on and talk really quick. I don't want to spend too much time on it because we talked about it extensively last week. The Last of Us, right before or right after the show last week, Cary, you did a live stream on your Steam Deck playing The Last of Us. I stopped by and I watched for a little bit, and you showed off like the super muddy textures. But since then, it's been patched. Have you played it since it's been patched, and has that improved your experience on the Steam Deck at all?
No.
Okay. No, you haven't, or no, it hasn't.
It
Or
hasn't.
both?
No. It's still not ideal. Textures are streaming in late sometimes. Whatever is decompressing and waiting to get there. It was wild to see because like I was looking between the two of them, between 6800U platforms and Steam Deck, and this is just a cinematic scene, and you can just see like there's parts where, and this is happening not just on Steam Deck, it's happening on 6800U as well, just less frequently on 6800U. But you can see like Ellie would just have no freckles on Steam Deck, but she would have freckles on 6800U, and it's like, whoa, that's pretty nuts. So no, it's not there yet. When you look at it, you don't know why the CPU is just spinning its gears like crazy, and it's just drilling away. And our problem is the Steam Deck has a limited power budget, and it's just being devoured entirely by the CPU, just spinning its cycles in the background.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that this can get patched up and fixed some way. For what it's worth, on 6800U, with the latest AMD drivers that are optimized for Last of Us, that actually runs really, really well. At 20 watt, I'm hitting 40 FPS pretty much consistently at those same Steam Deck settings. So it's like almost night and day difference there. So if you have a 6800U and on Windows, just get the latest optimized driver, and that's actually really nice.
Absolutely. Russ, Richard, have you guys been playing that? Or if not, we can just move on.
No, not at all.
Okay. Real quick, let's see. Okay. We've been talking about remakes. Richard and I have both been playing a bunch of Resident Evil 4 remake. Ridiculous scores on Metacritic. Not that I think Metacritic is the end all be all of anything, but good game gets high scores on there generally. Metroid Prime Remaster, huge on Metacritic. Like these two games are going to have the two top scores of the year. I think it's going to be tough to beat them. And Cary's holding up something. I can't tell what it is though. What is that?
Physical.
Like physical copy of the game. Nice. All right. So here's the question. Should these games, well, first off, are they in the running for Game of the Year for you guys? And if so, should they get their own category instead when it comes to award time? And before I let you guys answer, I'll just say my thoughts on it. I don't care about awards. I don't care who wins the award or anything like that. But I find it interesting. I find it to be interesting that the best games this year so far from according to a lot of people, are games from like 15, 20 years ago. Russ, you start us off.
Yeah, so I think as long as the game is like redeveloped, which I think these two have been, they're standing on the shoulders of an older IP. I get it, but if a film did this, it would still be eligible for the Oscars. And so I got no issues with having a remake compete with any other brand new game. Like it's just I like the idea that they're updating it. And maybe there's a bit of a like nostalgia thing that makes people like it more, because they're familiar with it. I obviously really enjoy Metroid Prime, like the original one, and so the remastered one has been a treat just to play. And I don't think it would be that way if it was Metroid Prime 2 remastered, because I never played that one. So yeah, I get that. There's a nostalgia piece to it, but all the same, it's a new game, and it's a new generation of people playing it, and so because of that, yeah, I think it's eligible.
Richard?
Yeah, I think one thing to note too is that Dead Space 2 or Dead Space remake, that was another.
I forgot about that one,
right?
and it's awesome.
Yeah, really good. It's not, in terms of like Metacritic, it didn't reach that like top 2, top 3, but it still did really well. And it's another remake that's just doing really well. I think I like the idea of having them get their own category. I do think it's a different thing. I think that not just nostalgia plays a part, but I mean, we're picking from a litter of, prestigious games already, right? When we're talking about Dead Space, Metroid Prime, Resident Evil 4, we already know that the base of what they're working with is excellent, and they can drop the ball and make it, not as good as it was the first time around for some reason, but the base that they're working with is great. And I think that's a little bit different than someone coming in with a brand new, premise, brand new IP or whatever it is, and knocking that out of the park. So I like the idea of having a different category, but I also I'm not invested enough to say that should then be exclusive or excluded from the actual like Game of the Year award.
Fair. Cary?
Yeah, I would have to agree that I don't think it's necessary to exclude them from Game of the Year awards in any way. If anything, it's just a highlight of a failing of the industry that they're so cost conscious and conservative that they don't want to invest in money in a new IP that might not work out. Instead, they'll just refix up a game that they know is already good and just resell it. So I'm fine with it, becoming Game of the Year award or whatever, but that's really just a bad mark on these gaming companies. But I get it. If I was in their situation too, if I was the money man and I wanted to make money, I'm going to go for the surefire bets. I can put myself in their shoes and say, yeah, I could see how you came to that conclusion. But I'm looking forward to Starfield. Starfield's going to win it.
Oh, okay. Well, he's already saying it's going to win.
No, I mean, dude, like we got Tears of the Kingdom coming out. This is a big year.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that if you look at Metacritic, I think Zelda Breath of the Wild got like a 97. And I think Metroid is sitting at 96, and I think Last of Us is sitting at like 95 or something. So, I mean, it's possible. I mean, it's my most anticipated game of the year. In fact, let us know in the comment section what are your most anticipated games of the year, and maybe we'll have a conversation about that in the next episode, because we are coming up on an hour, and I do want to get this cut off. But before we go, I just want to say that Humble Choice just dropped today, the games that are coming out. And there's some really decent games in this list. Do you guys have any recommendations from this? Because I know everybody is always talking about Death Stranding. Roller Drome to me looked really cool. And Life is Strange 2. I haven't played that one, but I played... did it have a different... The third one had a different naming convention, didn't it?
The colors.
It wasn't like Life is Strange. Oh yeah, True Colors or something. Mm-hmm. Like that I thought was really cool. Any of these games jump out to you guys as really cool Humble Bundle games?
Honestly, I don't know any of them other than Life is Strange and Death Stranding. And Death Stranding's one of those that I've had on my PS4 forever. I just need to play that darn game. I love Hideo Kojima games, but it just takes me forever to actually get into it. So yeah, that's it.
Roller Drome is the one for me. It's really good. You go into it really expecting Tony Hawk, and it's different from that. It's a lot more focused on shooting than you sort of expect it to be, but it's really, really good.
Okay. I haven't played that, but I loved the art style. Like the art style reminded me of the 70s, and as an old man, I was like, oh, nostalgia. I like nostalgia. Russ, you're all about the nostalgia, right?
I am. Whole channel on it.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, everybody, that does it for today's episode of the Nerd Nest podcast. If you're watching this over on the YouTube channel and you want to just listen to the show, there's also a podcast version of it. So make sure that you check out that link in the description. And if you're listening to this on your podcast player, then you can check out the YouTube channel over at Nerd Nest on YouTube. Russ, tell everybody about, like, you have a video that just came out today about the ROG Ally, right? Or is that coming out tomorrow?
Yeah. It was this morning. Yeah. So it was just a speculation video about it. And Cary did the same thing on his channel, The Fox. And it's funny because we have two different things. Like, he's like, 120 hertz is going to be terrible. And I'm like, I can't wait for 120 hertz. And so they're both great videos to watch. Yeah, it was a lot of fun to put that together.
Richard, do you want to tell everybody about your next video or your last one?
Yep, I'm at Fan to Deck. I took a break. I was playing Resident Evil 4 all weekend, so I didn't make a news roundup this week. But I'll have another news roundup coming next week after spring break.
And Cary?
Yeah, I talk about the Asus ROG Ally. I say it's the best thing ever. We should all sign up immediately. No bad things at all do I say about that thing.
Yeah.
And you can find me at The Fox on YouTube.
Awesome. And I've got a video coming out tomorrow about my top 5 reasons why I think the Steam Deck is fantastic. So make sure that you guys check that out. And as always, thank you to everybody for, like, the panel for coming and hanging out with us, and all of the people who came to hang out in the live chat. We hit about 200 people here today, so you guys are fantastic. If you want to support the channel, you can either head on over to Patreon, or you can join the membership. And of course, head on over to these other guys' channels as well and subscribe to them, because they are fantastic, and the show wouldn't be what it is without them. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.